Rachel, you're muted. Leora, why don't you go first?
Okay, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Leora Elin. I live in Waterbury, Connecticut. I am a full-time shadchan, dating coach, and kala teacher. I've been doing Shidduchim since I was dating myself, so about 26 years now. I've been doing Shidduchim, which led into helped me segue into dating coaching, which also helped me move into kala classes. It is an honor and a pleasure to be working amongst these two amazing women who I have consulted with, worked with in the past, and it is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us.
Okay, Devorah, you want to go?
No, you're going next because I'm trying to get this out there to people.
All good. My name is Rachel Burnham. So wonderful to finally be here after some technical difficulties. But not all roads that end up where they need to be are smooth. So we can get into a little bit more of that later. I am a dating coach. I've been a coach for about 12 years. Had about a 14-year dating experience, and after hundreds of guys and thousands of dates, Baruch Hashem, ended up on the other side and really just try to take that experience and help others do the same.
Okay, I figured out how to post it on my story. Okay, so hopefully more people will migrate over here. And worst case scenario, we're recording it, and so we'll put it where it needs to go. Okay, so I am primarily a dating coach. I'm also a Jewish educator. I speak to women and girls on a variety of Jewish topics, not just dating. And my biggest claim to fame professionally of late is my 5th baby, no epidural. So this is my book. It's called Marry a Mensch, Timeless Jewish Wisdom for Today's Single Woman. This was literally my heart and soul went into this book, and it's an easy read. It's on Amazon as well as my website, and really will help you guys so much in terms of your dating. Stay tuned for the sequel, Men. Okay, first of all, it happens to be the book really, there are guys reading it and saying it's really helpful to them. But I would like to do a collab with my the male members of my family and write something just for guys. So stay tuned, but that's going to be a big project.
All righty, should we jump right in?
Yes.
Let's jump right in. Let's do it.
All righty, so we have a variety of questions of yours, and did you want to get started with the questions and we can just start going around and seeing where everyone's at?
Yes, I think the first question is for you, Rachel.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Should I read it?
Yes,
I have
please.
it all in front of me. Okay,
Please,
so
please.
question number 1 is, are my deal breaker expectations realistic? For example, a guy who doesn't vape, drink, etc.
Okay, so aside from answering this question, I think that we want to get into it in general in terms of some of the hotter topics that are coming up more recently. I'm dating a great guy, everything's going really well, but he vapes or he drinks or he has an occasional, weed, not routinely, but this is kind of something that I've been hearing a lot from multiple people. And so I'm here to tell you a few things. Number one, what you see in dating, you probably can expect to see more of in marriage. And that works for the good things and for the bad. So if you're seeing a lot of vaping now, you'll probably see a lot more of it later. Okay. If you're seeing certain habits that happen every single day or in multiple times a day, I wouldn't call that something that is once in a while, or that is just something that I can get over so easily. That's something that's really a built-in habit, quasi on the borderline, or maybe including an addiction, and therefore expecting somebody to quit that for somebody else is not very realistic. So for example, if I decided to go on a diet and I decided to lose X amount of pounds, and that's something that I'm choosing to do and I'm taking actionable steps to get there, then that's something that I'm working on myself. So if you meet a guy who says, I want to get off vaping, I don't like it, I don't want to be the guy who's vaping in front of my kids or in front of my pregnant wife, and I have signed up with this coach or this therapist or this program to try to get off of it, and he's actually taking actionable steps to work through that, that's a really good sign. He A, recognizes that he has a challenge, he B, was able to seek out the right professional help, and he's taking action to do something about it. Could you expect him to be perfect yet? No, but he's actually showing real action, and I like that. If somebody is saying something like, oh, get over it, it's not a big deal, everyone's doing it, it's like not such a big deal, like all my friends are doing it and tons of girls are fine with it, when someone says that to you, not only is it, problematic, not just because of the specific thing we're talking about, it's also problematic because they are downplaying your needs and they're crossing your boundaries and making you feel that your needs are not important. So for example, if somebody grew up in a house where like that their dad used to drink or their dad used to smoke or their brothers did that and they're not bothered by that, maybe they're okay with that. But if someone is really bothered by that and they're like, I can't deal with that smoke, I'm really nauseous, I can't have anyone come near me like that, there's no way I'm dating like that guy like that, then that's a real deal breaker and you should stick to that and be very clear about that so we don't waste anybody's time. But to expect that someone's just going to quit for you and that's actually going to hold for life is just not realistic. They're doing it for you because they really like you and they want to see this move forward. But let's say you're married, that motivation is gone because now, in a committed relationship, and it's highly unlikely that commitment is going to stick.
Okay, great. Question number 2 is, I'm okay with, these are, by the way, questions that were submitted to us before this evening, okay, that we're going to try to get to all of them. So question number 2 is, I'm okay with the boy not being so stark. That means so frum, but my parents are not. How do I go about letting my parents know that some of the trends of today, like not making it always to minyanim, doesn't make him a bad guy? So I have a bunch of clients who are in this situation because they've moved to the right of their parents or to the left of their parents, and the parents aren't 100% understanding where the girl herself is. And this is just, as a mom who went through Shidduchim with my girls, this is really, really important. It's important to take yourself out of it as a parent and really help your child to date what's right for them, not what you would choose for yourself. So oftentimes, again, it's really helpful to have an external dating mentor, whether that's, the Rav or a Rebbitzin or a dating coach or a dating mentor or a therapist or whatever, someone outside of the family who can facilitate this. But we really want to be careful as parents, not to, put our template on top of our kids. We really want to let them, they're the ones who's going to be married to this person. So we really want to make room for that. So, you can certainly ask some pointed questions of your child to really make sure that they're dating properly and have thought through the issues. But when your child is saying, I'm okay marrying someone who doesn't always make it to a minyan, we don't want to impose our strictures and our standards onto our child who may not be interested in, ascribing to that part of the frum world.
What?
So, yeah, did someone say something? Oh, RG, you have to mute yourself. Do either of you guys want to add something to that?
I would just say that, a girl might say, I don't really care if a guy goes to minyan, but then she's also going to say, as long as he has like a close relationship with Hashem.
It's not live, eh?
Please
It
mute
is.
yourself if you're not speaking. Thank you. Please mute yourself. So she might say that, but I think she doesn't always realize that a guy's relationship with Hashem is very often expressed in his commitment to davening or his commitment to learning. And so she might meet this guy and really like him and also be frustrated that he's not as, growth oriented or as into working on himself or learning or and she might she might think going to davening is not a big deal, but they're often attached. So just understand that those often come together. Not always, but usually often they do.
I also do feel like, in some parts of the more right-wing world, I think some girls don't really understand how hard it is to be a frum boy. And
True.
we sort of, since it's really rishus, it's voluntary for us to daven, according to most opinions, as a girl. So we sometimes don't understand that for a guy, it's just hard 3 times a day, every day. Is really a big commitment. And, through vacations, through whatever, Bein Hazmanim, you're not in yeshiva, whatever it is, it's not so easy. Sarah Esther, can you mute yourself? Sarah Esther. Rachel, I think you might be able to mute people. So it's just something to bear in mind that, of course, if on your deal breaker list is a guy who goes to minyan 3 times a day, that's beautiful. Even in that case, I would allow for the occasional missed Minion. You know, if someone had, their goal is to get to Minion 3 times a day, but something happens,
If
you
you're
know,
dating a guy who's in medical school and he's keeping crazy late hours and he's missing a minion because he had a big final, like you have to ask yourself the context. It's not always
right,
just
right,
straightforward.
exactly. Okay, question number 3 is, can I say okay to him now, but once we have kids, I want him to change, Leora?
Okay. I did real estate for 15 years. It's very similar to Shidduchim, Bas Ploni LaPloni, Base Ploni LaPloni. And what we do in real estate is when we sell a house, we say we're selling it in as is condition. Sometimes we sell the house exactly the way that it is. What you see is what you get. What came up on the inspection isn't changing. They're not going to replace the boiler. They're not going to suddenly paint all the rooms. They're not going to upgrade the kitchen. What you see is what you get. When you're dating somebody and you're meeting them, they tell you that they want to be different once they're married. They want to be different once they have kids. They want to be able to improve. So I'd like for you to take a look at the whole person. What you see in front of you is probably who you're going to marry. At the same time, there's also a concept that when you do move into a house, you're going to do improvements. You're going to do some updates. You're going to take a look at one room and say, I'm going to give it a new shade of paint. I'm going to put new furniture in that room over there. Things are going to evolve and things are going to change until it becomes something that's a place of comfort. So when you do go out with somebody, you can't go out saying, I'll go out with them, I'll accept them now, I'll marry them now, with the expectation that they're going to change into what I expect them to change into. At the same time, it's unrealistic to think that a person's going to stay exactly the way that they are. And that's one of the beauties of the journey of dating is you get to explore with the person and discover who are you, what's important to you, what are your interests, so that you can learn more about their direction so you could sort of see the direction that they're going to go in. I always say, like, there's GPS, there's Google Maps, there's different options for how to get to your destination. You know, what pathway is that person going to take? And I think it's okay to say yes to now as long as you don't expect that they're going to change, but you can expect that together you can grow realistically based on where you are now. You can grow together if you're a good team.
So we shouldn't be going under the chuppah with the expectation that we have a to-do list for his self-improvement.
It's
Just
probably
a
not
few
going
pages.
to, probably not going to check off a lot of those boxes.
Okay, great. This is also for you, Leora. Can I say no to a woman because she has social media?
Okay, so this has come up a lot where I'll try to set up, a shidduch, and I'll have a guy that will say, you know what, I found out she has social media, I'm not interested. Sometimes that will come up a little more, in my experience, that the girl has social media versus the guy having social media. If both have social media, it's usually not an issue because fundamentally they have the same, value on it. And those fundamentals don't usually bend very much. If you have two people who don't have social media, it's also not an issue. So the question is when one has social media and one doesn't. So very often I'll have where a guy doesn't want a girl who has social media, but the girl has it. So it could be in the reverse also. But for the sake of this question, I'd like to answer it. So there's a difference between, the answer is depends. It depends. It depends. Is she scrolling all the time? Does she use it for, her makeup? Does she use it for work? Does she use it sometimes? Does she, have a private account? Does she have a public account? So it's really a depends type of a question. But when somebody hears that somebody else has social media, I'd rather them explore and question to understand it. So if they do give a yes or they do give a no, they know what they're giving a yes to or they know what they're giving a no to.
Great. Okay, question 5. Is the game Perfect Matches a nice thing to do or a must? By which date do you recommend playing it? So I have been coaching for over 13 years professionally, and I always recommend this game, but I never saw it myself because I didn't have it. And I actually reached out to the makers of the game and they said it was like whatever, they have to make another printing of it. So there were not, I couldn't even buy it from them. So I found a shadchan in Passaic where I live that had a copy of the game, and she's like, I really don't use it. Like, you can totally borrow it like long term. So I got the game, and my husband and I played it. We've played it the last couple Shabbosim, which was very cute. Yes, we match after 27 years. We're matched. But anyway, we're taking a bunch of the deeper cards to Miami, or we're going to go to Florida, whatever. Anyway, it's very cute. So now I really actually know what I'm talking about when I recommend this game, and I really do recommend it, particularly for a couple of different cases. Sometimes you have a couple that they're both like a little bit on the introverted side. And so neither one of them is like, so tell me about, okay? They're just not that type. And so it could be a little bit awkward. Like, how do we bring up these conversations that need to be had about finances or division of labor or lifestyle or whatever you want? How do we bring them up? We're like uncomfortable. So for a couple like that, it's a game changer because then you're just playing this fun game and picking the cards, and it's just much easier than being like, okay, so let's talk about money. So that's number one. Number two, I think that I find when a couple has gotten to a certain stage, and the part B of the question was, by which date do you recommend playing it? I generally recommend, obviously for a frum couple, like sometime in the date 3 through 7, that genre, like certainly not 1 and 2, because that's kind of airplane talk, chill, light, how are you, etc. Date 3 on, maybe 4 on, we're getting into the game. And again, there's like 3 sections, light icebreakers, medium get to know you, and the DMC part. There's gajillions of cards. You don't have to play all of them. You can kind of flip through them. But I know that when a couple has gotten through the serious cards, then we didn't forget to talk about something. I'm not on the date with them. So I just feel like our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted when I know that they made it through those more serious cards. So, and again, I think it is a little bit more fun, organic way to have these conversations than the stilted way that we might, the more awkward way we might feel about having conversations about money or hashkafa or social media. Anything that we're talking about is just more fun when you're playing a card and you're just answering back and forth. So I'm a big fan, particularly now that I saw it firsthand. And, for my couples that, that are more secular, that don't know what perfect matches is and don't have access to it, there are things you can Google. There's something called 36 questions to get to know someone that you could Google online. There are other types of dating games that are not in the religious world if you're dating in the more secular world or whatever. So doesn't have to be perfect matches. The advantage of perfect matches is that for a frum couple, there are questions that are specifically tailored to our world. So that's what's very nice about it. Okay, number 6. This is about long distance dating. So sometimes there's a girl who does not want to move. She wants to live near her family. And I guess the question is, should she consider dating long distance or basically moving? Should she make geography a deal breaker? Okay, so I would never tell my client, you can't make geography a deal breaker. That's not how I talk to my clients. However, especially at a certain age, I would strongly suggest someone being open to moving. Now, obviously, if you're the woman, it tends to be that the man is going to be more of the breadwinner and so less likely to be able to move unless he has a very remote job, like a job he could do remotely. So I think as women, we should be open to potentially leaving our Dalit Amos, as we say. It doesn't mean it's forever. Maybe it's for the first few years. I mean, a lot of couples go to Israel for the first few years. Maybe once you have 2 kids, you want to move back near your parents because you need some grandparent help, which I definitely recommend. Plug, if my girls were on this call. But anyway, so it doesn't have to be forever. It's something that, we want to marry the right person. Then everything could be negotiated and discussed. And obviously, if 2 people care for each other deeply and everything else is working out, so then you can have a productive conversation about where the long-term place is that you want to settle. But, again, this is such a personal decision. I would never force someone to leave their family, but it is something that maybe, at least at a certain age, we should be considering. Your bashert might be in a different city, and shnei makom, shnei mazal. It's something that we probably ought to consider at a certain point. Does anyone have any other thoughts about that?
So
No,
I would just add that if someone knows that they're like inherently really an out of towner, or they're inherently just like, a Manhattan city girl, that, pretending to be someone that you're not is, it might work for dating, but long term it's really going to be a challenge. So if you know that you're that kind of person and you cannot live with your, New York amenities, then let's just be, open and blunt that I really prefer to stay within the tri-state area. It doesn't mean you can't leave your, from going from Brooklyn to Muncie, but at least you're being honest with that. And vice versa. I think just people just have to be honest with like who they are. Now, some people are just open to living anywhere, but some people are very dead set on being where they're comfortable and used to. And that isn't a small thing, because although you might get a husband, which is great, you also have to live in a city, and it's also a certain culture of being in town, out of town. And so that's something that you're going to take with you for a long time, and you should be comfortable with that. So just keep that in mind.
I think that's one of the perfect matches questions, by the way.
Perfect.
Okay. Number 7. I think probably we all might want to weigh in on this. Is it seems like guys today are not as mature, self-motivated as the guys of a number of years ago. What changed? And I don't know about you ladies, but I often hear from my clients of all denominations, not just from, like, all Jewish women that I work with. So many of them will say, I'm looking for a real man, and like, I can't find. And I do think that our culture, the secular culture impacts us. And, Charlie Kirk, amongst others, was spending a lot of time talking about, guys, get out of your parents' basement, stop playing video games, go get married and have a family. So this is a concept that the secular world is struggling with, and it has seeped into our world as well, where, failure to launch, I think it's called, where, it's for some reason a little more difficult for some men to start the next chapter. Obviously from an individual standpoint, so then that's not your guy. If I'm coaching a woman and she's like, I don't understand, he's like still doing this or this, and when he's not standing up and he's not asking me out and he's not pursuing me and he's not, being the man, I'm like, okay, so then maybe this isn't your guy. But as kind of a global issue, I definitely think that this is something that has entered our world, unfortunately. And, I think we need maybe to do a little bit of a better job with chinuch. We can't change the whole world, but I do think that this is something that probably could be improved upon. What do you ladies think?
Leora, you want to go? You want to?
No, I definitely think that we're having a lot of women coming back from dates that are definitely coming back. They want to feel the masculinity. They want to feel that the man is going to guide them. They want to feel that the man has his head on his shoulders, that he knows what he's going to do, that he's already done things in his life to show that he will be able to provide security for her, whether that's, financially, whether that's in learning. It's more of a mature conversation to be having during the dating period, about taking responsibility and having, autonomy over, decisions that they make, and not just, like you were saying before, being in the parents' basement, as they age older. I think we also have to take a practical, realistic look at what's going on in, in our society, and that there is a lot of, digital influence, and there are different, there's a mentality. I'll just take it easy. Let me just do what's comfortable, like really comfy. I want to be really comfy. And sometimes we have to say, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And it's time to man up. And I think that it's important for girls to be able to share their needs, when they're dating somebody and they're in a good place, to also be able to say, like, these are my needs from a man. Same way the guy's going to say to his, to the girl he's dating, these are my needs, in a relationship, and that they should be able to be open with each other.
So I just want to, I agree 100%. And I really do agree about the chinuch piece. I think we could be doing a better job growing our boys into men a little sooner. A couple things I just want to point out. I think it's really important that people set clear boundaries in terms of what they are able to tolerate and what they're not able to tolerate. If you really cannot handle a guy that, let's say, does not have a college degree and has 5 years under his belt, then you shouldn't be dating those guys that are not there, number one. But if you really want a guy who's been learning, also understand that he's been learning for all those years that you've been in school. So you can't wonder why he doesn't have that high powered job yet, because he is a couple years behind, not in the behind sense, but in the sense that he was learning. So also kind of look a little bit at the broader picture. You're not going to be able to have the guy who is learning at the same time that he's also building his career fully. Like, that's not very common. So decide which one is going to be a greater priority for you. But in terms of manliness or leading, part of part of wanting a leader is also being able to allow yourself to be led. And I think a lot of women are kind of like, go here, do this, here's the directions, and I want you to pick me. And they want to be the one in charge at the same time that they want the guy to lead. But once you start picking up that in charge, he's going to back off and just let you do your thing. So, kind of, you got to let him lead the conversation. You got to let him show what he's capable of. And also understand that I think, I know this is a little bit controversial, but I'm not very pro guys dating very, very young. I think many of them are not ready to be dating when they're starting dating. I actually like the Chavetz Chaim route. Date when you start dating when you're 24. I like that idea, when you're much more mature and really ready for it. But a lot of times we have guys who are kind of getting thrust into the system. They're not really ready for it. They're getting pushed by the shadchan, by their parents, by neighbors who want them to date. I would love for them to be a little more mature, but I also want a girl to understand that many guys mature more when they have to, meaning when they're in the relationship and they are now a husband and now they are a father, and it's expected of them to provide for their family, to pay tuition, to lead a Shabbos meal. That's kind of when they grow into those shoes. And so very often you won't see that in advance. You will see potential. You will see little glimmers of hope, right? And little sparks. But very often women are able to potentialize themselves outside of marriage, and men often need marriage in order to really grow themselves. They need that structure. They need that security, that safety, a woman to, like, be by their side as a team. So, all is not doom and gloom. I think that many men really do step it up in marriage, and you obviously need to see some of that potential, and hold your boundaries for what is it that you feel like, I just cannot handle anything below X. Like, I need a guy to pick me up. I need a guy to plan the date. I need him to, pursue me on some level, right? Set whatever boundaries you think are important, stick to them. And also know that guys tend to mature and develop more in marriage than women outside of marriage.
I like that. And that actually leads us, right, that really is into the next question, which was, how can the ever continuous demand on the working women of today leave room for women to lean more into their femininity? And I do think that this is something that a lot of people and couples struggle with, is that, because women are now like basically doing it all. So like, what do I need you for anyway? We can fall into that. And it's really important, I know this from firsthand, working on this, to carve out space and make room for your husband to lead, like you were saying. And even if I can do everything, I don't want to do everything. But if I start doing everything, he'll be like, oh, she's got it, and I have a tendency to take on way too much on my shoulders, and it's just not relaxing. And then women are complaining that I have no time to myself and I'm strung out and I have a million, the mental load. So let him take some of the load off of you. So a lot of women that I coach will struggle with, should I ask him out? Should I text him? Should I tell him when I'm free? And I'm always like, sit on your hands, or go do a yoga class, or go out with your girlfriends, or call me instead. Do anything besides that. So part of leaning into your feminine when you're in the dating process is relaxing and like leaning back and letting him pursue you. I'm like, ladies, I'm begging you, stop doing this. Like, stop texting him, stop asking him out, let him be the man. And as Rachel was saying, when we make that space, he leans in. But as long as we're doing everything, he's like, oh, okay, this is comfortable. Yosef, can you mute yourself? So I think that what you're saying really is not just in marriage, also in dating, that if we kind of make space for him to lead, he will lead. But as long as we're running everything, it's very comfortable for him. You're asking him out, you're paying halvesies or whatever you're doing, like it's very comfortable for him. So we don't want to do that. We want to, lean back. Um,
I would just add
okay.
to just allow yourself to be the receiver. Like
Yes.
sometimes it's very hard to receive because outside in the world, when you're single and you're moving your career forward, the way you got ahead is by pushing forward, being ambitious, go getting, right? And that's exactly what does not work in dating. And for many guys, even though you're so beautiful and you're so accomplished and you can do it all, it's actually a turnoff because they don't feel like the man. If I don't feel like if the guy doesn't feel like a man in the relationship, it's not going to work for him. He would rather go for someone so much less accomplished and so much less of everything if he could feel like, wow, this is someone who I can actually feel like I can give to her and she could respect me and she could look up to me and I have what to, contribute here. So just kind of sit back, relax, receive, let him pick you up. It's okay. Let him do the driving. He can take you to the airport. He can lift the suitcase out of the car. It's okay. I know you know how to get the suitcase out of the car. Don't do it. Just let him do it.
Excellent. Okay, number 9. Is it still a stigma to look for a working boy and not a learning boy? Which one of you guys
Mm.
wants to take that?
I passed that one on to Rachel.
So, okay, so I so much to say about this. So I feel that when we go to elementary school, high school, we're kind of all wearing the same uniform and the same style shoe, and then we go to the same camp and we're all going to the same whatever bungalow colony. We kind of our lives are very parallel, and we go to the same seminars. The moment that plane hits the ground, everyone's lives are going to go in vastly different ways, but I'm still kind of conditioned that my life should look like everyone else's life because it always has for so long. And so the fact that all my 5 friends just married guys in learning means that I probably should also marry guys in learning because like that's what everyone's doing. And the reality is that that might work for them and it may not work for you. What I do think is extremely important is being authentic, being true to yourself, and being honest. Am I the kind of person who actually is okay with the fact that I might have to live with less? I might not go away, fly back to visit my parents if I'm living in Israel, my husband's sitting and learning. I might have to not have the kind of help that I grew up with or the kind of amenities that I grew up with because that's the lifestyle of a Kolo wife. Is that what I'm actually ready to sign up for? Because if I'm not, being more honest and true to myself and marrying a Ben Torah who's a good person and who cares about me and has good midos is going to be a lot more honest and real with who you are. And in general, long term, be more true to your long term relationship. And I see a lot of people who kind of just get off the plane, everyone's marrying a learning guy, and a couple of years in, they're just like drowning in kids and finances, and they're like, how did I get here? It's just I can't do this. It's too much. But this is what you signed up for. Like this guy thinks he's being supported, and there's a place for that if that's something that you really want. I have a niece who lives in Beitar. Her husband is learning. Her father is still sitting and learning. There's nothing else she can imagine marrying besides a guy sitting and learning, and that's what she should be doing. But that doesn't necessarily work for everybody. So taking a hard look at yourself, which I think is really, really difficult. I have clients calling me and they'll say, like, I said, tell me a little bit what you're looking for. And they'll be like, 1 year, 5 years, 3 years, 10 years. I'm like, but who's the person? And they're like, oh, I never thought about that. Why not? Aren't we going to be marrying the person even after the years of learning? Like, what is his character? What is he? Is he humble? Is he the kind of guy who's going to get up for the baby at 3 in the morning? Is he thoughtful? Is he thinking outside of himself? Like, what are his values outside of the learning? And I think we really need to think about that. And so if we get stuck in the short term of what everyone's doing, and we're not looking in the long term of like, who am I? What can I actually handle? Is my personality the go-getter who could be the main breadwinner while my husband sits and learns? Or am I the kind of person who really can't do that? I just can't handle, I'm not a multitasker. I couldn't handle going to work and also managing the family. So taking a hard look at yourself, I think, is probably one of the most important things people can do for themselves to kind of plot out not just who I'm dating now, but kind of the future life I'm looking to have.
Excellent. Okay, Leora, what is the right way to handle or respond to a par of date, a
Oh,
mutual date?
par of dates. Okay. So if a first date is a par of date, that's good. Parv means not flashix. We the Elins, we're carnivores. We like flashix. So flashix is usually means like it's really good. But if a first date is parv, that's good. First dates anyway are usually more like interview style. Hi, how are you? Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Who are your siblings? Where did they live? What did you do in your summers? It's very interview style. We're not good friends yet. So if the first date's parv, that's good. That's a good, go on to another one. Do you go on 3 or 4 dates and they're all good and they're building, and then all of a sudden you hit a par of date? I don't know, the other dates were really good, but this one, it's not as good as the ones that were before. So I say, well, the same way at work, sometimes you have an off day. It's not as good as the rest of the days, or sometimes you have a bad hair day. So you're allowed to have a date that's not as great, or the day didn't work out as wonderful as the ones before. So if it's parv and it's still good and the ones before that were good, give it another shot. Keep going forward. What if you go out 5 or 6 times and they're all parv, they're all neutral, and you don't really feel like you're getting somewhere? So now what do you do? So you have to take a step back. Really, at this point, it's really good to, consult with somebody, whether it's a Rev, a Rebbitzin, a dating coach, a shadchan who's, trained in dating coaching, and to say, what's going on here? Now, if both of you are not interested and you keep trying and you're pushing, eventually you're going to hit a wall where you don't really want to get to know the person any better and you don't really want to go on one more date with them. But if you do have one of you that's very interested and the other one's sort of parv, but one is very, very interested, while the other one is parv, the parv one has to stop and take a look and say, is there something blocking me from being able to move forward? And that you sometimes need an Azer Connecto. Like if it's not yourself, I think Rachel, this is your term. If it's, everyone needs an Azer Connecto. Like, so if you're single, it could still be somebody else who could take a look at you and let you know where you're holding. And they can let you know if you're, maybe you're nervous to continue. Maybe you don't want to get to the next level with them. Maybe you're holding back. But you have to try to do your best before giving a no after a parv date. That's pretty much my feel on parv dates.
Yeah, I mean, I have a whole section of my book called Mr. Parv.
Oh,
And
really?
I have a few reels on this, and people like willfully misunderstand me, like willfully. You're saying yeah, we should marry Mr. Parv? How can you say such a thing? And I was like, did you not listen at all to the minute-long reel that I made? Okay, so I definitely do not recommend marrying Mr. Parv. However, I have countless clients who are now very happily married to guys that started off parv. And, someone's writing in the chat, we're going to try to get to those questions at the end. How long do you wait to see if it gets better? So I have a number of techniques that I use with a couple. Usually it's the girl who's more parv and the boy is more gung-ho in this type of a dynamic. So I'll say to her, were there any moments on any of the dates where you were like, he's so cute? Okay, what was going on at that moment? Copy paste, right? We want to just replicate what's working. So sometimes she'll say, yeah, on date 4, we had such an amazing DMC. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's so cute. He's like really like listening to me and whatever. Okay. Or a girl will say, we had this really fun date on date 5 where we just like goofed around and we had so much fun. And I thought like, he's kind of cute. Okay, so whatever's working, we want to do more of. And that's going to be a very individual thing. But so that's often what I'll say, Leora, is like, I'll be like, okay, you went out 5 times in your parv. Were there any moments at any point where you felt a little flicker? What was happening at that moment? And sometimes there is something we can tease out and like replicate, and then all of a sudden things start getting better when we do more of that. Additionally, sometimes for some girls, if you're only seeing him once or twice a week, sometimes that's just not enough to move beyond parv. So let's say there's been Yomim Tovim, or like he was in Eretz Yisrael, or someone went away, and you're just having trouble getting momentum. And so it's been like, it was a week between dates 1 and 2, and then it was like, you went out twice, but then there was like another 5 days where you didn't see him. It's very hard to be excited about someone that you're seeing so infrequently. So sometimes I'll recommend seeing someone maybe 3 times a week for a couple weeks to see if that can kind of like jumpstart the attraction and the whatever. But at the end of the day, whether we may disagree on like how many dates to give it, but at the end of the day, there will come a point, as Leora said, where you'll just be like, someone shoot me now. Like, I can't go on another date with this person. You've reached the end of the line at that point, and then you don't beat yourself up, and you don't, let anyone make you feel bad for ending it. Usually when I'm speaking to someone, I can often tease out, like, what is it concretely that's making you parv? Because sometimes it's something on your deal breaker list that you're not even aware of like logically, but then I'm like, wait, he said what? Isn't this like something that you're really looking for? Someone who da 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 da. And then she's like, oh my gosh, yeah. And then we can figure out a logical reason why you're parv. Because it's somewhat rare to have everything that you're looking for and be parv, unless the
Right.
person's just totally unattractive to you.
Yeah. So I just want to speak to that for a minute. So first of all, the end point, I kind of call that clarity, right? So often everything's really, really good and I'm just not feeling it, or it's just not going as how I expected it to go, right? And I'll tell people, like, parv is okay, but at a certain point, we got to keep going until we get to that clarity, whatever that clarity is. And that clarity means I'm in or I'm out. But what I find with a lot of clients is, for a lot of girls, they're too embarrassed to say it, but it's attraction that's holding them back. Meaning he's everything they're looking for, the personality, the this, the that, everything's there, but I just am not physically attracted to him. And there is a certain amount of time that you can try really hard to make that happen. And at a certain point, it just might not happen. If I become more emotionally attracted to this person, very often the physical will follow along. If I think like, wow, this person really understands me, we like really appreciate each other's, worlds. This is someone who I can really have a good time with and we can have deep conversations. Very often they will get more physically cute. But after a certain point, if we're still just not feeling it and the traction is just not there, then sometimes it's just not there and we have to just call it quits.
Yeah. So I would just encourage everyone, if you are in that situation, please find a mentor to speak to, because
Agreed.
it's so scary to me, to dump someone that really is checking off everything you're looking for. Some girls, it just takes them longer to feel connected to this person that they just met, like they're not the 5 to 7 dates and get engaged type of girl. They need to go out longer. And as I continually remind my clients, I looked in the Shulchan Aruch and I couldn't find a source that says you can only date 9 dates and otherwise you have to get engaged or break up. I looked for the source and I couldn't find it. So therefore, everyone needs to take a chill. Okay, the shachanim, the parents, the grandma, everyone, the guys, everyone needs to take a chill and relax and realize that sometimes it takes certain girls longer to develop those feelings. And, I always say, if I were to interview the guy that you're dating and he already knows, like he already has clarity, right? Which is often the case. Like the guy has clarity, the girl feels part. So if I were to interview him and say, there's a chance this is your wife, and there's also a chance that this girl could bruise your heart and she might break up with you in a few dates. Choose your own adventure. What would you like to do? Every guy on planet Earth will say, of course I want to keep dating her. I'll take my chances. And that's something I really admire about men. They're very courageous. When they feel they've met the right person, they don't care. They will go through fire and water. So as women, we need to remind ourselves that you don't need to worry so much about him. Worry about yourself. Like just hang in there and give it enough time to see if it could go one way or the other. Okay. And you can check out, if you are on social media, you can check out all my stuff about Mr. Parv. Okay, number 11. How can we bridge the expectations of wanting emotional intimacy with the person who we date when it's not there yet?
Okay. So very often we show up wanting emotional intimacy and we show up kind of like expecting that it's just going to show up like the movies. You know what I'm saying? I'm just going to feel it. It's just going to happen. And we neglect to realize that we often have to make it happen. Part of making it happen means sharing something more vulnerable, opening up, maybe discussing something that's a little bit more sensitive. If you open the door to sharing something like that and you're kind of inviting him into that conversation when I'm being vulnerable and you're being vulnerable, that creates deeper connection. When I feel safe to share something that's personal, when I feel like you're actually listening, you're not putting me down, God forbid, you're not making fun of me, but you're genuinely listening with compassion, with empathy, that makes me feel more connected to you because this is sensitive information that I don't share with everybody. So when we're holding back and we don't want to open up and we don't want to share, I hear this from a lot of girls. Well, I don't want to open up and share if I don't know this is my person. Okay, but you're not going to know if this is your person if you don't open up and share. So it's kind of a catch-22. You can't win unless you play. If you play, you might win and you might lose. But if you don't play, you certainly can't win. So pushing yourself just a little bit to share something that's a little bit personal. Maybe it's your hopes and dreams. Maybe it's something that happened in your past. Maybe it's something that you went through with a friend, but you need to be able to share something more deep and personal in order to see if that other person is able to do that with you, because that is what really brings deeper emotional intimacy.
Excellent. Okay, this is someone who is a single mom with kids, and she doesn't have so many options where she lives. So she's been dating remotely, on Zoom and that type of thing. And she says that she feels like the calls get serious very quickly. And so it's like more of a serious conversation and less playful. And then when you do meet and it doesn't work, the breakup is so much more painful because they spent so much time on Zoom getting to know each other and having serious conversations. So, like, what's a good way to handle remote dating? So maybe you guys, we can all answer this, but I think that it is normal, of course, to, not want to invest in a plane flight until you know that something is at least in the ballpark or on the playing field, so I do recommend having a couple Zoom dates just to kind of establish a basic rapport, not hugely serious conversations actually, but just similar to dating, where it's the beginning stages of dating. You're just trying to see if there's a basic rapport, basic chemistry. Is there like enough to work with here? Obviously, hopefully you've done some research already so that you know that he's basically matching up with what you're looking for hashkafically and like personality wise. So you're not testing that out so much. But you're just seeing if there's like the conversation went okay, it went fine. Is there enough there to warrant a flight? In general, the difficulty with long distance dating is that it's kind of like there's two metrics. So like on Zoom, text, and phone, you're on level 9 in the relationship. And then in person, you're level 1.5. And so it feels very weird. So I generally recommend to have as much time as possible in person. And in the intermediary times, have FaceTime dates or Zoom dates where we really simulate dating, twice a week. Sit down, put your makeup on, sit down for an hour in front of the Zoom and try to have a normal, date. It's what can I tell you? Long distance dating is super challenging. It's not for everyone, but if you're living in who knows where and there's no single boys, you're going to have to either move or you're going to have to date long distance. There's just not much.
So
not
I'm
much
going to
choice.
jump in here because I did a lot of long distance dating, and even when I dated my husband, it was long distance for most of it. A couple of things. If you meet somebody and you guys don't like each other, you don't hit it off, there's nothing to talk about, you don't have to worry about the distance. This isn't going to happen. But if you meet somebody and you really like them and there's so many things that line up and this is really working for you, you're going to make this happen because it's worth it. And so, when I was dating my husband, we only saw each other every 2 or 3 weeks because I was in New York and he was in Maryland. And in between, like, you can make it fun, guys. Like, you can order Uber Eats for your date and sit down and eat dinner together. You can go to a virtual botanical gardens or take them to a virtual museum or concert. Order them. I had this guy who ordered this girl that he knew was very into painting. He ordered her all these paint supplies. They did paint night, but like in their own places. So you could do a lot of fun things and get really creative. And if there's enough good there, then it's worth it enough for you to invest, and you're gonna want to make it happen. At the same time, if you really don't connect with this person at all, there's no need to keep torturing ourselves. Moving forward, I also recommend that Zoom dates be shorter. Zoom dates should not be as long as a regular date. I wouldn't go past an hour, hour and a half. Keep it short and sweet. And as you were saying before about, the Zoom and the FaceTime and the text, I really never want people's face-to-face relationships to be behind the tech relationship. Like the face-to-face should always be ahead of where tech is going. So we shouldn't feel like we're going to be sharing deep conversations through text message that we would never feel comfortable saying in person. That should never happen, because then what you're doing is creating like a false relationship, and then when you meet in person, it's just awkward and feels disconnected. But I have seen in many cases, like when there's a will, there's a way. When two people really hit it off and they think there's enough worth it qualities, you will make it happen. Whatever you'll have to do, you'll meet halfway, you'll take some breaks, you'll phone, you'll text, or Zoom. There's so many options now today.
I also want
Excellent.
to add in that people will usually call and they'll say, I'm coming into New York, or I'm going to be in the Muncie area. They'll usually let you know as a shadchan ahead of time. And then you could like start thinking, who do I have for them? They're coming into New York. They're coming in now. I want to think extra hard for them. So definitely let the shadchan know when you're coming in from out of town.
Great. Okay, Rachel, I'm going to give you this question.
Sure.
How do you respond to women who are longing to find their soulmate, longing to build a family of their own, but their time has not come yet? It's been long, painful years of loneliness and emotional exhaustion of trying, showing up with a smile, going to another singles event, another singles Shabbat, another phone call with a shadchan. Living a meaningful, purposeful life is difficult when nothing seems to matter because you feel that everything else feels small and meaningless aside from building a family. How can they find meaning in the meantime? Their careers are maybe a little meaningful at best, but most definitely not enough. How would you advise them to find meaning in their life when the one most meaningful thing is not available to them?
Okay, so big question. I lived a lot of that. First of all, I just want to say nobody is in any place that they're not supposed to be. Hashem is putting you in the place that you need to be, like exactly in that place. There's no better place for you to be in that moment. I know that's hard to hear, and it might even sound very cliche to some people, but there's a tafkid that you have to fulfill while you're single. And until that tafkid is fulfilled, you can't move on to the next tafkid. In addition to, it's a really good idea to flex the muscle of getting really positive and happy with the stage of life that you're in. Because even when you get married, you'll be like, oh my gosh, but why don't I have kids? I know I have kids. Why don't I have more kids? I don't have more kids. When are they getting out of the house? When are they getting married? So when you get accustomed to always wanting to be in a place that you're not, it just doesn't produce the deepest amount of fulfillment and happiness. And I really recommend people say, hey, like I did, like, okay, I'm single. This is where I'm at. Is this where I thought I'd be? No, but this is where I'm at. So how can I make this stage great? I'm going to volunteer in these organizations. I'm getting involved in that chesed. I'm going to build my career. I'm going to get tons of friends. I'm going to travel the world. I'm going to make time for dating. And I'm going to, soak up every bit of joy and meaning and sustenance I can from this stage of singlehood, because one day I will not have that freedom and I will not have that silence, and I will enjoy being in the next stage. But if you think that the next stage of life is going to be perfect and not have its challenges, you are incorrect, because every stage of life has its challenges. That's how Hashem runs his world. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here any longer. So like there are times, like I waited 14 years to get married. I got married at 34. I went through so much, married my 220th guy. And there will still be times that, this one's throwing a tantrum, that one has a fever, they're running out of the bath naked, this one's fighting. And I just close my eyes and I'm like, remember when it was just silent? You were at the peak of that mountain and you're just taking pictures and just like dreaming of this life. This is what you chose. Like, this is what you wanted, right? And I'm so happy to be here. But it's super important to be mindful of being in that state of where you are and being happy there. That's number one. Number two, I think it's important to point out that, and I don't mean to be, negative here, but all of dating, if you plan on marrying one guy, which I hope you do, okay, all of dating is essentially rejection. Okay. If we marry one guy, right, 99.999% of all the guys that we're going to date, either I'm going to reject him or he's going to reject me. The reason why that's really important to just kind of soak in is because if all of my dating isn't going well, that's exactly what has to happen. I need to reject every single person, or they need to reject me in order to find that one person that is actually mine. That doesn't mean he's not out there. It means that when my time comes, I'm going to appreciate him more because of all the rejection, all the guys that I thought saw that were wrong. I'm going to appreciate the guy that is right. And it is less likely to find that one right guy than it is to find all the ones that are wrong. So just because you're dating the guys and it's not happening doesn't mean it isn't going to happen. It just means it hasn't happened yet. And so when we get out of that mindset, well, it's never going to happen, never going to happen, never going to happen, what we end up doing is like the next guy that happens. You know what happens? Never going to happen. Get out of that mode. It is going to happen. I am going to find my guy. Even if that date didn't work out, even if that relationship fell apart, those were not meant for me. Those were pathways for me to figure myself out, for me to be more directed towards the right direction. Now that I know that that guy doesn't want to date me, I'm going to focus in a different direction. That's what actually leads you to the right person. And that's exactly what you need in order to get to that right person. So don't mourn the journey. That is the road to success. That is your road. So I wish that people would enjoy this time, go back to school, follow your dreams, open that business, travel the world, whatever hope and dream that you have, so that you are a more full, happy, positive person, because you're going to date better, you're going to present better, you're going to attract better, just because you're someone who's like, I'm awesome, look at me, I've done this, that, and the other. And now I'm really ready for marriage and I'm ready for that home. And I know a lot of people will say, like, but I'm ready now. Here's the thing. The distance between, where I think my life should be and where Hashem thinks my life should be, we call it a lot of anxiety and depression. And I don't mean to minimize or belittle anyone who's deeply struggling in those areas, but I do think that aside from real chemical, anxiety or depressing challenges, I think there is a large part of people who just feel like, I want my life to take off now. I want the job now and the guy now and the money now and the kids now. And that's just not how Hashem runs his world. And it's a struggle, and it's an avoda for everyone for whatever they're struggling with. This could be applied to anyone, not even only dating, right? But Hashem gives us what we need in the time that we need it. And we have to learn to just surrender and accept that. And that's so, so hard. And if you need to go and cry it out and throw a kicking tantrum, screaming that you wish that wasn't so, then do that. But the reality is that Hashem has your person. And very often you would never even accept your person, respect that person, even look at a guy like that, unless you had gone through the journey to realize that's what you actually needed. So I think that very often the journey that we fight is the journey that we need to that road, that road to success. And I wish that we could just embrace it and embrace ourselves and know, like, we're awesome on our own. We don't get married because we're looking for someone else to give us happiness. We get married because we are fully content of who we are. We know who we are. We know we want to build. And now we're looking for that person. And I daven for everyone that it comes sooner than later. But in those times that it hasn't come, make something of yourself. You'll be a better mother. You'll be a better wife. You'll be more confident, more positive, because when you're full, you have more to pour out onto everybody else. So don't think there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you at all. Your guy hasn't come yet. That doesn't mean he isn't coming, right? And the more positive we are about this process, the better we have the opportunity to attract the right person.
Beautiful. You're the best person to say that. Okay, we're winding down here. What if you like the guy, but you're worried he won't be able to lead you? He is more type B, Leora.
Okay, I think there's a misconception that the guy that I marry is going to be packaged exactly how I imagine him to be packaged. Here you are, you're dating somebody and you like him. He says he's very manly, but he's a type B. Who said that a type B can't lead you? And what's your definition of lead? In order for a guy to lead you, he has to what? Has to make all decisions? What if he's a type B personality? You want to go out to eat for supper. And you say, do you want milchiks or fleischiks? And he goes, doesn't matter, whatever you want. That doesn't mean he's not leading you. Okay? The person who you like is the person who's considerate, the person who understands you, the person who you could be yourself with. When you find that person and you like him, but he's a type B and you imagine a type A, so that's proving the point that he is not what I envisioned. He's packaged differently. There was this great example that a Reb from Shayashav used to always give. He would say, the boy goes to his Rebbe and he says, Rebbe, I don't know what to do. I knew I was going to marry a girl with purple hair. So the Rebbe says, okay, so what's wrong? He says, I'm dating this girl and I really like her, but she has green hair. He says, so what's the problem? He says, I always knew I'm going to marry a girl with purple hair. It's a pendulum shift. I have somebody who I'm going out with. I like them. It's not what I thought. The problem isn't, is he going to be able to lead me or not lead me? The problem is that I have to change my mindset because the person who I like is different than what I thought that I was going to marry. And just because somebody's a type A or a type B doesn't make them better at leading or worse at leading. As long as they have the qualities and they can lead you in the ways that you need to be led in a relationship. And also it's important to know that a healthy relationship is two healthy individuals that work together like a good team. So as long as what if you're better at the finances than he is? even though it's a more manly job, to take care of the finances. It doesn't matter. As long as you balance it out, then I think you're in a good place.
I mean, maybe for a type A, type B is what they need to really lead them, right? If a type A is marrying a type A, that's gonna be one intense house, right? Very often I'll get these calls from girls who are like, but I'm accomplished and I have all these degrees and I do all these things. And he's just like much more chill. I'm like, yeah, but you always say that when you go out with him, like you've never been more calm and more yourself and more relaxed because he brings that out in you. So the type B could actually be your leader in a very different kind of way than you would expect it.
I like that.
Okay, great. Someone asked, why are people always setting me up with someone so much older than I am?
Okay. So there's definitely a problem that we've all experienced. Everything works. Okay. You could have a guy and a girl who are close in age, that works. You could have a guy who's younger than the girl, that works. You can have a guy who's much older than the woman, and that works. So everything works. The problem is when a lady is saying, I'm frustrated because I'm in my 40s, let's say, and they keep setting me up with guys who are in their 60s. And now that woman feels like, why the Shidduchim constantly trying to set me up with such older guys? And this has come up, and this question did come in. So my answer to that is tell the Shidduchim what age you're comfortable dating. If you're only comfortable dating somebody within, at that stage of life, a 10-year age difference, then say, I'm really only comfortable dating up to 10 years older. I will say that I am guilty of having made a shidduch of 14 years apart. Rachel actually was very involved and helped with it. And they are the most beautiful couple. They're married, I think, 6 or 7 years now. So I don't have a problem as long as the stage of life that you're at works for with your companionship, and that you make a great team. That's the most important thing. But as an individual, being recommended guys that are so much older and that's out of your comfort, just tell the shadchan that's out of your comfort.
I would also just add that to avoid this issue, I really think that more face to face, whether or not you're doing like a singles event or a Shabbos meal where people can actually meet you before they meet the number on your resume, is extremely useful. When you hit it off with somebody in person and you look young and you're put together and you've got tons of personality, it kind of bypasses the age on your resume and they see you first before the number. It does make a difference.
I agree completely. And I think that I think a lot of us in this shidduch space have come to the conclusion over the last year or two that it's too much resumes dating each other and not enough people actually meeting. Because you're right, once you meet the right person, all of these like little things that you were like, no, I'm machbid on this. And then it's like, I totally don't care. He's adorable. I'm like so smitten. Who cares, you know? So I think that we do have to like swing the pendulum a little bit back so that more people have the opportunity to meet in person. I know that these shidduch lounges are springing up in different communities, which is a fabulous idea. Okay, and we're going to really quickly go through the chat questions if we can get to them. What about guys in drugs who are in treatment?
They're in treatment currently.
Seems that way.
You need to be able to lead a functional life. That means you cannot be dependent on any substance to be in a healthy relationship because the substance is going to come before the relationship. So unless somebody is able to lead a functional, healthy relationship where they are not substance dependent, I would not recommend it.
Okay, there's a few questions about what if he says one thing and does another? He just needs a good woman to change. Can you marry potential? People say you have to lower your expectations. Okay, what's that?
Actions speak louder than words. Forget the words, focus on the actions. So if a guy said he's going to pick you up at 8 and he's a little bit late, okay, fine. Does he apologize? Does he feel bad or does he not even say anything? Like, watch his actions much more than his words. It could be there was a little traffic and he might text you in advance and be like, oh, I'm so sorry. But how does he act around that? Or does he say like, whatever, I'm late, get over it? How does he act in that way? Number one, what else was there?
Just marrying potential. Yeah, I guess you said that.
Listen, we all marry potential, but if he never changed a day in his life, you need to be okay with who he is today. Can he change? Will he change? He may not. Okay, you cannot expect that he's going to change. There used to be a Broadway show that I never saw, but the title's great. Like, I love you, you're perfect, now change. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right.
Like, that's just not realistic. If you cannot walk down the street with confidence saying, like, this is my person, I feel proud of that. And one definition that I use for respect when we're going through deal breakers is if my child turned out to be
Mhm.
this person, if I had a son that turned out to be like this guy, would I be happy about that, proud of that, embarrassed of that? That is a good barometer to figure out, like, do I respect this person? So if you cannot accept them for who they are today, just like you wouldn't want to be with someone who can't accept you for who you are today, because by the way, you also have some flaws, just like
Really?
I do, just like we all do, right? So
One
if
or
we
two.
cannot exactly. So if we can't accept that, then better let him move on to someone who can.
Excellent. And as we all know, a man's most primary need emotionally is to feel respected and admired by his wife. So if you are already going into the chuppah not respecting and admire him, it's not going to be a go. She also asked who should visit whom first in long distance dating. I mean, my preference is definitely that the guy comes first. Sometimes it's literally impossible. Like he has a job that he cannot leave and you're more flexible. He's flying you in and he's covering the whole bill. Okay, maybe we could be flexible, but in general, obviously, we want the guy to make the effort the first couple of times. Is it dumb to date a boy who lacks confidence? Will he become more confident? So if confidence is on your deal breaker list, then you should not date him. Not everyone is looking for that big, gaver type of a guy. I think in general, men do become more confident when they get married. They just sort of stand taller and they have a woman by their side. But we, again, going back to what Rachel is saying, we cannot marry, the what if, the potential, that if he only changed in these ways, then I will be happy. This is a disaster in marriage. So again, you have to really sit down in a quiet moment and come up with your personal deal breaker list. I have plenty of content on how to make that, both in my book and on Instagram. How do you know what is a deal breaker, what is a must, what is a need versus a want? But once you make that list and it's a reasonable list, you really need to stick to that and not be pressured by anyone to cave.
But you're not going
Uh,
to give him confidence. If he doesn't
right.
have, like, you're not going to lose weight for him. You're not going to give him confidence. If he doesn't have his own confidence, that isn't going to change. He might be happy that he's got a girl by his side, but that's not going to change in the scheme of
Radically
life.
change them, right? This is a comment someone made. Boys will man up when they have to. They don't because they can, because girls accept it. Once all women stop accepting the minimum, boys will be forced to either man up or stay single. It's that simple. We
So
are
I
the
agree. I agree.
gatekeepers.
If all women said, I will not date anybody who drinks or vapes, guys would stop because they wouldn't have
Yeah.
date.
I just don't
Yeah.
think women are going to stop dating the guys. So I think they're going to continue to date, and I think we need to work with what's in front of us.
Okay.
Um, how should girls balance letting him lead while also showing interest? So I often say that, we sort of lost the feminine arts that our previous generations had of like communicating interest without asking out. There's so much on your face, your tone of voice, your body language, your warmth. You're like interested in what he's saying, you're smiling, like so much that can communicate interest without taking the man's job. And that's really, we have to like brush up on those skills, because I think in our generation a little bit we lost that ability, but there's so many ways to communicate interest and like almost invite him to ask you out
Because he's
versus
feeding off of
doing
your
it for you.
energy.
Right. Right. What about when a guy doesn't drive yet?
I've had girls that have driven, even if the guy drives because he just got his license, and the worst thing for a girl is to be in that passenger seat with a new driver.
Oh my gosh.
Get an Uber.
Sometimes I've been so scared, putting my daughter in a car.
Get an
Like these
Uber.
guys,
Just
they
get
don't
an
have much
Uber.
practice.
Just get an
Yeah.
Uber.
Yeah, Uber, exactly. How long should I do? Okay, we kind of dealt with that. I noticed I become more and more picky the more men I meet. Help.
That has more questions to it.
Yeah, that's a longer conversation, but I don't know that it's more picky. I just think it's more scared. And therefore I'm so scared that I'm meeting people that are not meeting my expectations, that I'm just adding more things to my list. I'd probably speak to a coach about what's blocking you from moving forward, because there's something blocking. I don't know what it is.
I also sometimes call it I make a composite picture of all the positive traits and midos that I ever dated. And I'm looking for a person who has all that, who doesn't
Devorah,
walk planet Earth.
Devorah or Leora, did anyone ever call you with like the negative qualities that they're looking for?
No.
So it's like we're all kind of looking for fantasy because people only call me with the positive traits. Like we all know people are human and they have these things called flaws, but the reality is that like we don't actually go looking for that. But then when a real human being shows up with real flaws, we're like, what is that? You know? And the reality is it's a real person. That's what it is. It's a real person. Look in the mirror. You know, you're
Right,
also
right.
real.
And that's why we want to know what's a deal breaker because,
Right.
so I call it an airborne peanut allergy, right? So there are certain traits that really you're like, right, you feel it in your body. You can't marry someone that you have that kind of a triggered response to. But then there are things where you're like, kind of cute. Okay, whatever. I wouldn't have chosen that, but like it's fine. I'm getting so many amazing things that are important to me. I could live with that. That's not a deal breaker. So you really have to be honest with yourself. And if you feel that visceral reaction in your body, like I can't go on another date with this person because of this thing on my list, that's really a deal breaker. It's an airborne peanut allergy. Please do not push through that. But obviously, as Rachel's saying, everyone has flaws. And so we have to have forbearance, savlanas, about the things that are okay, it's not a deal breaker for me. Would I have chosen it? No, but I can live with it. It's not, I can have forbearance about it. Okay, really quick, let's finish. Okay, whatever. Someone says that some guys with the long distance don't want to do video right away. I mean, if there's a shadchan involved, this is where you get the shadchan to make that happen. If there's no shadchan, then you have a little bit more of a problem. But I think you can, in a nice way, say, hey, I prefer FaceTime, even if it's just for a short bit of time. I think that's really important. Otherwise, it's just like, what are you doing already? Okay, it's hard to gauge if you two can weather the storms of marriage because dating is all dandy. I mean, that is true, and we do date very short, but I think that you're going to get a feel for this guy's character about with the stories he tells, the research you did, how he responds to questions, the things he says from his life, you know, and the truth of the matter is when people have lived through some difficult experiences, they develop grit, they develop depth, you know. It's sometimes nice to date someone who's lived through something, who hasn't had like a bowl of cherries their whole life.
I like to ask couples 3 things before they get engaged that they don't like about this person and how they plan to live with it. Because if you can name 3, I don't know that you actually know each other well enough. But it's normal. Okay, so he's late and I'm early. Okay, so I'm gonna tell her that the wedding is half an hour earlier. I'm cold, she's hot. Okay, we're gonna add another heater. What are you gonna do to work through those things that are uncomfortable? Because they're gonna be there. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't marry them, but they're gonna be there. And most times when people work through them, they're like, oh, okay, I guess I could do that. That's not so hard.
I like when
Right.
people date long enough and like, did you ever see the other one tired? Did you see them a little bit cranky pants? How did they respond? How did they treat the waiter? I enjoy when they actually get to see them, a little bit out of their dandy style.
And by the way, when you have that first disagreement or uncomfortable moment that you're so scared of, as much as it's uncomfortable, it's also extremely productive because you start to work on your communication and working things out and seeing different perspectives. And when you work that out successfully, that brings you closer. So that's not a bad thing.
Right. I had a girl that was dating a guy, and she said they're actually engaged now. And she said, I have to tell him some things, but I'm scared to tell him. Like, I don't want to insult him. I don't know how to say it to him. What do I do? I said, tell him how you feel. She said, but what if he gets upset and gets really insulted and talks really not nicely to me? I said, then run for the hills. That's exactly what you do if he responds that way, because you need somebody that you could be yourself with. So you need to be honest, you need to be open, and you need to see how he responds. I want you to see how he responds. I don't want you to try to make this work and dance around, like it's glass and act like you can't, approach him. Actually, I don't want you feeling that way at all. She called me afterwards. I said, how did it go? She said it was amazing. She felt so much closer and so much more connected with him because she was able to be vulnerable in herself. And he appreciated that she told him that she was able to tell him how she actually felt. And they were able to work through
Beautiful.
it together.
beautiful. Right. It,
I
it
used to say that.
jump-started their emotional intimacy. Right.
Yeah, I used to say that I had to break up with a guy first before I married him to see how he'd react. Because like I had some guys who like handled it very well, and other guys who were like, I would won't even go into it, you know. So sometimes
Right.
that helps you see their character. But
Okay, should a partner's career be a primary factor in my search? I have some hesitations about the lifestyle of a paramedic and want to know if that's a valid concern.
first of all, careers come and go. You know what I'm saying? Like I know people who marry the lawyer because he's going to make a big secret, and then he dropped out of law school because he couldn't make the cut. You know, so you need to marry the person. The careers can certainly change and evolve over time. He might be a paramedic today. That might be a stepping stone to him becoming a doctor. I don't know. What are his long-term goals? You know, this might. What does he want to end at that point? I don't know. I also think more than the career is having a conversation that I wish more couples would have about materialistic expectations. So if you think that you need 5 vacations every year and a Pesach program and a new Gucci pocketbook every birthday, that's something you need to discuss and figure out if you're on the same wavelength. And probably a paramedic might not be able to handle that. But if you're looking for a kind, considerate person who wants to care for their family, and today is a paramedic, and when the time comes, he'll take another job or he'll go for another degree as the family grow and the needs increase, then that might work for you. But you got to, figure out what are those expectations. And very often couples get very uncomfortable talking about this. I've actually put this as part of my needs list. What are your materialistic expectations? Low, medium, high, medium, high, like what are they? Just so that we can just be on similar paths. It doesn't actually affect dating so much, but it does come up in life a lot.
Yes. And I think it's definitely in the perfect matches game.
Mhm.
Okay, two more questions. I'm an empowered woman, which means I practice being in my extreme divine femininity, but my married girlfriends tell me I need to be a strict girlfriend. And once I'm married, be an empowered wife. So I don't think any of us would agree with this. I mean, I think that we're encouraging women to really lean into their femininity in the dating process and let him lead. You know, a guy puts effort into what he values. And if you make things way too easy by doing all the work for him, you will never really know how he feels. So yeah.
I just say that, dating is not the time to be putting forth all the giving. Dating is to find out if this person is able to meet your needs. Once this person is able to meet your needs, that's great. Then you get married and you can give, give, give. But don't do that. Don't try to be a couple before you're actually a couple, because you might end up resenting the fact that ultimately your needs are not being met.
Okay, what can one do if they've not gone out for a while and now start to think about the past guys they dated? What can we do to trust that we made the right decision? I mean, I'll just say right off the bat that when I meet with someone for the first time, a client, I do a dating history, and I often will ask them, is there anyone from your past that's not married that you feel you broke up with prematurely or you would want to give a second chance to? I have at least 2 clients married to guys from their past now. So obviously they weren't working with me when they dated him, or they wouldn't have broken up with him. But anyway, so there is such a thing as right person, wrong time, particularly if you were getting bad advice or you felt rushed or stressed or whatever. Maybe you did break up with someone and it's worth revisiting. Again, you want to compare that guy, what you remember of him, to your deal breaker list, to the things that are non-negotiable for you. Maybe it was a real valid reason and you're just feeling like nervous because you're getting older. Or maybe it really wasn't a valid reason. Maybe, like we were talking about before, maybe it was Mr. Parv that you broke up with too prematurely and you didn't give it enough of a chance, and he was really everything you were looking for on paper. You know, maybe it's worth revisiting. I had a girl who, the first time I met her, she had just broken up with the guy who ended up becoming her husband a week and a half before she broke up with him. Wait for it. The mother said he's not good looking enough. This is what I deal with. Okay. So I was like, we went through the whole list. He's literally matching everything. The conversations were amazing. And I was like, and you broke up with him. Why? Okay. Call the shotgun back right now and go out with him again. Okay. So it was a whole balagan. But anyway, Baruch Hashem, they are happily married. Okay. So last question. This woman thinks that we didn't answer it up above. So maybe we need to flesh it out a little bit more. How should girls balance letting him lead while also showing interest?
So, first of all, being in your feminine means, I get from a lot of these guys, like girls think it's all about looking good and putting themselves together. But what they don't realize is that they don't smile. They're not relaxed. They're always they have like an agenda. Are you this? Are you this? Are you going to do this? Are you going to go to Minion? Are you going to stop with the interview and just try to be? Can we just like be? Like just kind of enjoy the moment where you're going, the walk, the talk, whatever you're having, and try to just receive. Try to just be the receiver and let him lead. That doesn't mean that you don't have an opinion. That doesn't mean you shouldn't share your opinion, but it doesn't mean you have to push it forward. I think that sometimes we're trying to push it a little bit too hard. And like we said before, if you're a very type A personality, your type B might be your leader. That might be what you need for that balance to keep you grounded. You need someone to kind of calm you down when things get so intense. So every midah has an equal and opposite midah on the other end. If I'm ambitious and hardworking and always like go, 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 right? That's great. I also might be rigid and, short tempered and frustrated at times. So that calm person is my leader. It just might look different in your head than what you thought leader might be defined as.
And again, I think that, maybe what she's asking is like, if we're not going to ask him out, how's he going to know we're interested? I mean, so obviously if there's a shachan involved, that's a skip, that's a non-issue. But if there is no shachan, again, like, he texts you and you text back, not a balagan, like a whole, philosophical conversation, but like you text back right away, whatever it is, you're responsive, you're warm. But you're not asking him out. You're not saying, by the way, I'm free Thursday. Please stop that.
When a guy likes you, he will find you. He will.
I think there are ways that a girl could lean in also when they're on the date and he says something very interesting. She could say, "That's really interesting." Or he might say something very smart and she'll be like, "That's so clever how you thought of that." There are ways for women to lean in a feminine way that show the guy that she has interest in what he's saying. He might mention something in passing and she might say, when you mentioned that a few minutes ago, I was thinking about it. Can you tell me more about that experience that you had? And this way, these are like words that generate more conversation that let him know that she's leaning in while she's still maintaining her femininity.
Great. And I agree with Rachel. I'm a big fan of smiling. I've
Body
seen
language
it.
speaks a lot.
I've seen a smile like totally transform a girl's face. Like I once said to a client, I need you to smile more. You are so gorgeous when you smile. But when you don't smile, you look very like stern. And I could see on a date, if you're not smiling enough, that it might be off-putting. So ladies, don't be afraid to smile. It's the window to the soul, your face.
It's also the face that a guy might come home to every day.
I
So when
mean,
he sees that, it's not just everything that her makeup and her hair and her what size she is, but it's this face that he's going to come home to every day, and that is very attractive.
absolutely. All right. So I want to thank you guys for your questions. I hope this was helpful for everyone. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties in the beginning. Maybe we can figure out how to do another one, on live. And I just want to give everyone a bracha that you should be able to implement these ideas in your dating life and that the right person should be right around the corner.
Amen.
Amen. Someone is asking, is this going to be saved on the Instagram feed? Rachel, when you're the recording that's been made, is that the three of us speaking or is it the whole thing? Do you know?
I believe it's the three of us speaking.
Okay. So I hope that we'll be able to post it.
Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. Okay. Thank you, ladies
Thank you so
and
much,
guys.
ladies.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.